Hello. All right, so I wanted to create a quick video about beginning your fat loss journey because I know the concept of or idea of adding more calories is very frightening, especially if we are working together on fat loss. So the concept of eating more sounds very counterintuitive. However, I want to talk through a few different things. So where we're going to begin, these are things that I want to assign you with to do out of the gate, and these are things that you're going to be uploading to Trainerize. Now, checking with metabolic markers. So what are metabolic markers? What is your average pulse? What is your average blood pressure or like base blood pressure? Consider using metabolic monitoring sheet, which I'll send to you. But if you're cycling, also I want you to pay attention to that as well. Taking measurements. So I really would like to go off of measurements and photos as opposed to a scale. So with the measurements, you would get one of those like flexible tape measures around arms. We would do waist. You can do thighs and hips because I know that like hips and waist can very much differ in size, especially in women naturally. And weight is optional. Again, I would rather not go off that one, but you can document it if you'd like. Taking pictures. Obviously, you look at yourself every single day in the mirror, and it's really hard to be able to see like the small progressions unless there's like tangible images or tangible facts, data, proof. So with that said, what we would want to do is take a front, a side, and a behind picture. Ideally, you're taking it at the same time, same lighting, maybe even wearing the same like article of clothing because we want to be as consistent as possible. The last thing that we're going to have you do is track your food just to understand roughly how much you are actually eating. Now, I go back and forth on this because I would like to ideally track 3 days minimum. And I kind of have a hypothesis of where you are landing as a client based on our previous conversations, but I would really like you to use Chronometer. And I obviously will send you that link as well, but Chronometer, and you can see your vitamins, you can see your minerals, you can see all of the macros. And again, this is without my guidance, just 3 days of tracking what you're currently doing. Now, also a part of establishing the baseline is optimizing metabolic health. Metabolic health is just the fancy word for saying like the way your body metabolizes the foods and all of the nutrients that you're eating. Now, based on, so this particular example, 37, you're a female, 180 pounds, as of right now. Height is 5'6". Light exercise, which is like, I would say 1 to 2 days a week of strength training. And maybe you're getting like 7 to 10,000 steps. Moderate exercise is going to be maybe strength training 2 to 3 days a week, getting like 10,000 steps. Heavy exercise would be like you have a very active job and you exercise like 5 days a week, like religiously. Body fat, ideally you have a hunch about what your body fat is given like an in-body scan. But for this particular example, we're going to jot down 38. Now, this is calculating your TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. What this means is it's a combination of everything from you breathing, me moving my hands like this, me blinking my eyeballs, to everything that's like a formal workout, everything that's non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. It's called NEAT. So that could be like doing chores around the house. That could be like plucking weeds in your garden, chasing your kids around, things like that. So this is literally for your body to exist. This particular client, roughly 2,000 calories per day, including her exercise. Now, this is basically what we know as her calories. If she is, let's say she's tracking for a few days, like when we're establishing our base, and she is only eating 1,600 calories. That means she is already in a 400 calorie deficit, which is not where we want to begin, because what that means is you could be eating so much more and you're actually not, which is just causing the body to be under more stress. Obviously, we live in a world where we hear this all the time. You're driving your car, road rage. You are watching the news, depressing everything. You are screaming at someone in your household, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your significant other, so on and so forth. The list literally goes on, whatever you scroll past on Instagram. So what I want to talk through is the stress bucket theory. Now, I'm going to talk through this because it's the easiest way to explain like us filling up our bucket with so many health concerns, lack of sleep, financial pressures, like you're not getting sunlight in the morning, you're not eating breakfast. Then on top of that, when you're not feeding your body enough to actually be able to like joust all of these stressors, then your body's also in stress. What I want to focus on is when you're in a fat loss phase, because your body is going to be in a perpetual state of stress, it's going to perceive itself as being in a stressed state. This means that you must be very hyper conscious, hyper aware of other things that cause you stress. That could be going to bed on time, so making sure that you get enough sleep. That could be eating enough food, which we will be like talking through specifically for you on our calls. That could be pressures at work. It could be, again, financial pressures listed here. It could also be not getting morning sunlight, so like not resetting your circadian rhythm. It could also be high intensity workouts at all times, or like you're working out 6 days a week and it's always really intense. Your body's gonna be like, dude, what are you asking from me? So with that in mind, when you're in this fat loss phase, you want to make sure that you are basically mitigating other stressors that are filling your bucket because you want to focus on this and only this as your primary stressor. Now, I know that's like hard to ask because you can't necessarily predict everything that's going to happen outside of your control in your life, but what you can control the workouts you're doing, the food you're eating, the time you're going to bed, ideally, or majority of the time. Like ideally 8 hours, but if you're like, I can only get 7, or like I recently had a baby and they're still waking up, 6, maybe you try to get in like 15-minute naps. Or if 6, making sure that that's a consistent 6 hours. So with that in mind, we want to, again, optimize metabolic health. So when this particular client, given this example, her calories currently were 1,600. To maintain her current weight, her body wants or craves, desires 20 or 2,000 calories. So she's already in that 400 calorie deficit. What this means is we want to increase her calories at the get-go. Because if we start her deficit at 1,600 and then we're basically decreasing another 400, that would mean that she's eating 1,200 calories a day. Impossible. Like you would not exist. So if you want to start your fat loss journey, you must optimize your metabolic health so your body feels like it's in a safe place, not holding on to all the current stressors, and it's able to be like, okay, like I'm safe. Majority of it's safe. I don't think I'm getting like as much food as I was, but like I can live with this for now. And then ideally we go in this order. 1, 2, 3. Add in movement and exercise. So obviously, would you rather, trick question, would you rather eat more calories and add a little bit more movement in? Or would you rather stay at the current movement you're at and cut your calories way down? It's like kind of an obvious answer. You probably don't want to go about cutting your calories drastically. So adding in more movement and exercise. Now this could be walking. It could be strength training where your heart rate is not actually even hitting like a high zone 2, but you're lifting heavy weights because muscle is extremely energy expensive. So your muscle eats away at a lot of the insulin and the calories or nutrients that you're putting in your body. So the more muscle you have, the more likely your body is to be able to expend energy efficiently. Then after these, we enter a very small calorie deficit. Again, this you might not even be seeing change after 1 to 2 months, like as far as on the scale. That is why we have all of these different ways of measurement, like taking measurements, taking pictures, kind of seeing how your energy is changing, seeing if you're able to maybe sleep through the night, what's changing for the better and what's maybe kind of a red flag. We then get into, again, optimizing metabolic health. So balancing your macros to support your metabolism. Again, this particular sample client, 2,000 calories a day, she's eating 1,600. So we will slowly increase her weight because you're leading your body to try to conserve fat by slowing down your thyroid. Carbohydrates, glucose, is basically the way that your body transfers or catabolizes the nutrients that your thyroid eats. So if you're like perpetually on a keto diet, that means that your body's hardly getting any glucose to convert all of the necessary thyroid food nutrients. So again, not the most sustainable approach. Not shitting on anything, but kind of. Okay, so again, we're comparing our current intake and our total daily energy expenditure. If you're eating below that, which majority of people are, we want to slowly increase that to meet the 2,000. Vital body functions, as I mentioned, it's like breathing, blinking your eyes, cell growth, detoxing, brain power, and then activity and movement are something we do, like what we mentioned earlier. Now, next steps based on the TDEE. If you're eating below that, we want to increase your calories about 50 to 100 calories a week, or maybe every 4 days, depending on like how low you are. And then we will start to reach that TDEE number, which we will also make sure that we have enough protein. So protein is where our main focus is going to be. Fat, it's very tough because that is kind of like demonized in our society, I feel, but the minimum recommendation I'm going to say is 65. This is because if we are eating whole foods, which we are going to be as a duo, a lot of animal products just naturally have fat in them. Dairy, any type of beef, even like 93%, 7% ground turkey. Like it's hard to avoid fat in whole foods, except in like fruits and veggies. But again, we want to really prioritize a lot of good proteins, which is your meats, your dairy, et cetera, et cetera. So minimum of 65 is what we're going to guess. That means that we have a minimum of about 150 carbs at best. Now, if we need to up them, depending on like what you're currently eating, as I mentioned, we can, but these do help convert thyroid hormone from inactive T4 to T3. That's what glucose, aka carbs, aka sugar, does. So that was kind of like the sample client that I walked through. So that was more so hitting on parts 1 and 2 about optimizing your metabolism and adding in movement. The third is that small deficit. So I like to take a longevity or a sustainable approach where I don't want to just cut calories right out the gate and have you lose like 6 pounds in 4 weeks because you have a vacation coming up. This is a lifestyle. You want to give yourself time to let the first 2 weeks work their magic. So again, first 2 steps or weeks, increasing your calories might take 3 to 4, might take 4 to 5, might take 5 to 6. It does depend on every body and ultimately depends on where you are currently at right now. Now, ideally 3 to 4 months to let your metabolism catch up to adjust. I like to say maybe like 2 to 4. You can create a deficit without even lowering your calories, which is preferred. It is slow, but it will help your body reset. Again, I have a few clients that went into their energy surplus or their calorie surplus and like no weight changes whatsoever. They even started to lose weight because they were eating whole foods differently. If you still aren't losing any fat, we want to really rely on how your clothes are fitting. We reduce by 100 to 300, starting with 100. There's no way I'm going to tell anyone to go straight to 300. So really the markers that I want you to stay aware of are, again, stress, hormone symptoms, like how is your body digesting things? Are you kind of getting anxious a little bit? Autoimmune history, like are you losing your period easily? Things like that are what we want to take into consideration, because that will really inform whether or not we go intense on the calorie deficit out the gate. So ideally, we're supporting our metabolism by eating enough and optimizing calories for at least the 2 to 3 months. Establishing regular strength training and movement routine, which of course we'll be doing. And then if no change is there, we will be going into that deficit starting with 100. So this is kind of to recap, but I want to hit home that, again, this is a lifestyle. I am not the person that if you have an event coming up and you want to look great in a dress, nah, this is not it. Because I want this to be, again, sustainable. I want you to be able to grasp all these habits that we're forming alongside one another, and know that, and let your body know that it is in a safe place. Because once we hit that deficit, that will become that new maintenance. And again, your body is going to be like, okay, like we did this honestly pretty sustainably. And this is really what we want to monitor in terms of, like, again, less about the weight on the scale. Body measurements every 2 to 3 weeks is what I recommend. Again, that's like around the arm, waist, hips, maybe thigh if you would like to. Pictures every 4 to 6 weeks. So guys, we're getting ready to rumble. Let's kick it off.